Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you with us and have you viewing. We have a wonderful panel joining us today. Just to introduce things, Clocking In is an interactive multimedia tool that highlights racial and gender inequities in the restaurant, retail, and domestic industries based on real-life experiences of workers across the United States. All right, now let's introduce our wonderful panel, starting off with Julia Sebastian, who is a research associate at Race Forward, Jillian Medeiros, Senior Research Associate at Race Forward, Larry Swetman of ROC. Larry Swetman is a writer, artist, and activist. In addition to working as an online organizer with ROC United, he also maintains his own original content website, Revolution9, at larryswetman.com. Next, we have Darrah Sipe. Darrah Sipe is the interim director of the RetailAction Project, an initiative of the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. RAP is a member-based organization with the mission of building retail worker power. Darrah holds a BA from Wesleyan University and an MA in social work from the University of Chicago. And last but certainly not least, Alicia Garza of NDWA. Alicia is an organizer, writer, and freedom dreamer living and working in Oakland, California. She's a special projects director for the National Domestic Workers Alliance. She's also the co-creator of Black Lives Matter, a national organizing project focused on combating anti-Black state-sanctioned violence. Alicia's work challenges us to celebrate the contributions of Black queer women's work within popular narratives of Black movements. We have a wonderful, brilliant panel with us today, so let's get started.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Tara. So, as we were saying, Clocking In is an interactive multimedia tool that highlights racial and gender inequities in restaurant, retail, and domestic industries. So, if we go to the home page, you see that there's 3 industries here: restaurant, retail, and domestic. So, Clocking In overall provides, if you go to the upper left-hand corner, on the restaurant, you see that there's statistics. And this is just basically data showing the racial and gender breakdown of income, poverty levels, and job types from 1980 to 2012. So now let's clock in. We'll go to restaurant statistics first. And each industry has this page. It's the same for each industry, and it's to show really the structural pattern of discrimination that occurs in these industries over time. We'll go maybe to managers for the occupation. You can see for both female, and then even if we click for male, in 2012 we see basically still in 2012 that for either gender we see that about 60% of whites hold these positions compared to 30% of people of color. Next, we'll move on to the retail industry. We'll see that the retail statistics are set up the same way. And here we'll focus on income, which is the last. We see that while women of color have never made middle-class salaries in retail work, we see that the industry as a whole is increasingly losing its ability to provide middle-class salaries for most workers. So you see that is shrinking, and middle class will define between 30 and 60K, so kind of the light orange and yellow. And if we start and click on 1980 really quickly, you can see how much larger these areas are versus 2012. And you see how they shrink. Now we'll move on to domestic. And in the domestic industry, our key takeaway is the first graph, level of poverty. For more than 30 years, women of color consistently have had the highest poverty level in the domestic industry, with 1 in 5 living in poverty. And you can just see how large the pink area is on the graph for women of color. In 2012, 26.7% women of color domestic workers live below the poverty line, versus about 14.9% of white men. Turn it over to Julia.
Thanks, Jillian. So as Jillian said, Clocking In is a project that both points to the intense racial and gender discrimination throughout the service sector, but it also points to collective ways to resist and transform those inequities. I'm about to lead you through a part of the website that really allows users to navigate and see the discriminatory experiences that real workers often face. So now we're going to go through the restaurant industry first. and I'll show you what the tool actually looks like instead of just talking about it. And we created this in collaboration with the Restaurant Opportunity Center. So first, if we enter into the restaurant, we will choose a character. Perfect. So today we're gonna explore the life of Camila, who is a mother who recently moved to Texas and is looking for work as a waitress to support her family. So when we enter the tool, you'll notice 4 different icons at the top of the page. So those 4 different icons are the 4 major issue areas that we focused on where workers experience discrimination most intensely. From left to right, you have wages, hours, mobility, and benefits. So in this round, it's saying that it says that you're making $2.13 cents an hour, which is the wage for sub-minimum wage for tip workers. So tips are everything, and as you set down your customer's plate, he puts his hand on your back and makes a racialized comment. I hope it's as spicy as you. And so how do you react? So here, if we choose the final option, you ignore him and find a coworker to talk to. So you saw the money sign drop down and move and turn a different color, and so that means you got a point for wages. And those kind of points will add up and will reveal itself at the end. Also, what happens is at the end of each round, you're going to be presented with a combination of 4 resources that relate to the issue you just experienced. And they be like a combination of resources. 1 would be information about larger patterns of discrimination facing workers in the industry. 2 would be direct connections to advocacy organizations and campaigns that are fighting this issue. 3 would be models or victories that show how organized resistance has worked in the past. And the 4th would be labor rights so that workers can advocate for themselves and their coworkers.
The one thing that I'm struck by this game and this tool specifically is the realness. There is a power structure that has been built for centuries that benefit those at the top at the expense of those at the bottom. And the only way that you can really see that intersection is by realness, is by the stories. And so that's why Rock was so happy to participate in this project, because these are voices of real workers that are in this game. They're saying, this is my real experience.
Well said. I think you covered so many different areas that, for me, is profound, because you talked a lot about intersectionality, and I think what makes this project, this initiative, this interactive experience different and perhaps more useful in many different contexts is that we are looking at race and we are looking at gender.
So now I'm going to go to the retail section, which we did in collaboration with RAP, with the Retail Action Project. You meet Aisha. This character, she lives in New York City and is currently a retail associate who wants to become a designer. And she's a black woman who is also transgender. So here we're looking at an issue that came up again and again in our focus groups with retail workers. And you see Aisha and her boss. And it says that you came to work today wearing your hair natural, but the manager tells you to cover your hair or go home. How do you react? And we have 2 different ballot options. In this case, we're going to go with option 1. And as a result of that, it says that you go with other workers of color to a labor rights organization to start learning about anti-discrimination laws. And the resource provided here is that there is a link to that actual law that speaks to the illegality of being subjected to pervasive comments that create a hostile work environment. But we also wanted to connect workers directly to the Retail Action Project so they can get further support, perhaps potentially become a member and start plugging into those campaigns that actually have a multi-pronged approach that isn't just a legal approach.
The actual act of our members participating in the focus groups last year was a really empowering process, because folks felt like it was the first time that they could come to a safe space and a shared space to talk about things that they normally had to keep under wraps or be experiencing in an isolated setting. So just the process of sharing your story, speaking your truth was really transformative for a lot of our members who are now super excited to be seeing this tool on the computer, on their phones, in a means that they can share with their coworkers and their friends. So the fact that it exists as a platform is, I think, a really transformative tool.
So yeah, finally we're going to go to the domestic industry, which was made in collaboration with NDWA and with stories from domestic workers across the country. So when we enter the private home, we meet Saba, and Saba immigrated from Bangladesh with her son, and back home was a school teacher, and here she's working in childcare to provide for her family. So the scenario describes the issue around getting written contracts. So here we see Saba, who is advocating to have a written contract before she starts working, and her boss in this scenario says she just doesn't provide any, like, I just don't have any, too bad. If we continue, and we'll see the options drop down. In the options, we learn that Saba is still in the process of learning English, and start to see more of her story and recognize the barriers that many domestic workers, especially people who have immigrated, come up against in like a highly unregulated and underprotected industry. So we'll go with the second option in this case. And when we see the result, you get a point for mobility. The result is that you both find a domestic worker contract online that you bring to your employer. She makes some changes but signs it. Most importantly, here we're providing 3 different resources. So I'll just now take us to the conclusion page really quickly, which I know we haven't seen from the other portions of this tool. But for all of the characters, you'll get to the end, and it will highlight what you have won, given the choices that were made in terms of building towards collective action and resistance and victories.
This piece about resources is important both on the membership side and the worker side, and also on the employer side. So this tool for us is really important because it allows us to reach a different audience, in particular folks who employ a majority of women of color or immigrant women in their homes to take care of children, to take care of elderly or sick. So it's important to us that there's a resource that employers can use in order to make sure that they are treating workers fairly. Domestic workers have been in a fight for legal protections and safety for a very long time, and so we're hoping that this tool can both make visible the conditions that domestic workers face, but also can be a tool to spread the word and make sure that we change the industry both one employer at a time, but also that we create fair standards in the industry that will really benefit not just domestic workers, but all workers.
I want to switch over to some questions that we have coming in from social media. We have a question on Twitter coming in from Austin. How do employers usually respond to the work that you all have been doing for so long?
In any industry, right, there are employers that want to do the right thing, and there are employers that fight it tooth and nail. And we see as part of our core strategy really trying to build common cause with employers who also want to shape the industry in a way that promotes fairness and equity for the very workers who power that industry. So the question of how do employers respond to collective action really depends on that employer's worldview about what is necessary to advance the industry, but also it depends on that employer's values. So in cases where we share values with employers who are more and more folks who are also trying to make ends meet, we should remember that employers in the domestic work industry are not always part of the 1%. In fact, many of them are, middle-class folks who are needing extra support in the home. Many domestic worker employers are also what we call part of the sandwich generation, meaning that they have families of their own that they're trying to take care of, but they are also charged with taking care of elderly loved ones, right? And so as care gets more and more expensive, care is out of the reach of more and more people. So we really want to focus on working with people who are in this really precarious position of needing extra supports so that their families can thrive, but also who have an interest in making sure that that kind of employment is done with love and care.
Some final words to say, but I want to give you a moment to talk right now.
It means the world to folks just to have a lifeline of empathy, just to know that somebody's listening. And I think that that's the first part of coming together. And I think that tools like clocking in are great for that because it's a click away.
What is really great about clocking in is, like Larry was saying, it's part of kind of the online organizing frontier. This is a really great way to be linking people who might not necessarily have access to each other in a physical space. People can be connecting through clocking in. And so in that vein, it really ties into our biggest campaign right now, as I mentioned before, which is the Change Darrah campaign. And a lot of what we're trying to do there is online. So we're trying to talk to people across the country to build awareness about the campaign. So no matter where you are, if you could check out our website, RetailActionProject.org, look at the Change Darrah campaign there, or you can go to tinyurl.com/Change Darrah, which is where our online petition for the campaign lives. And we really want to blast that out so that the workers who are coming together at Darrah and supporting each other and taking risks by coming out and talking about the injustices that are happening at their store can feel supported by allies and Darrah workers from across the country.
We're so grateful to have partnered with Race Forward on this project, and we're really excited to make sure that the experiences of domestic workers are made visible so that we can build a better economy for all of us. If you're interested in knowing more about what NDWA is up to, we've just recently launched, in a partnership with Care.com, a Fair Care Pledge that we're asking everyone who supports and uses the work of domestic workers to sign on to. You can find that at faircarepledge.com. And again, we're really excited to be partnering with you all on this project, and we hope that many more people use it as a tool.
Please use the hashtag #ClockingIn on Twitter and on Facebook, and join us again during the week of July 6th, where we will be hosting a Twitter chat, again, moving these conversations forward in the online sphere. So please do join us again, and thank you all. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Thank you.